Now, joined by Pa Ranahan ahead of this Saturday's Munster Senior Football Championship semi-final between Limerick and Clare in the Gaelic Grounds. I suppose first and foremost, Pa, some people are a bit surprised that it is Clare in the Gaelic Grounds, but I don't think you're of that opinion.
No, we were chatting off air there, and even I was last week when I was asking lads what did they think was going to be the result between Clare and Cork, and adamant people were Cork, and I just had a real fancy. I know it's easy afterwards to say, oh yeah, it's easy to say that, but I had a real fancy for Clare. I just haven't seen what they've produced over the league. Like, they're so unlucky against the likes of Dublin. Like, they had that match won, and against Kildare they had that match won 2 or 3 times. And just the standard that they usually produce, and given as well that Cork really hadn't that much to play for in this. Obviously Cork wanted to get to the final, but they were already almost guaranteed Sam Maguire. And just, I remember reading Gary Brennan's article last week in the Examiner about how not competing in the Sam Maguire would have been such a blow for Clare. And it just felt, reading between the lines and knowing the standard of player they have, that they'd be really coming out of the traps to beat Cork. They'd have no real fear from either. I know they got hammered by them in the league maybe 3 or 4 weeks previously, but they learned an awful lot from that game. And I just had a sneaky suspicion, and I suppose they did ride their luck early on in that game. I think Cork hit the crossbar for a goal, and that would have changed things. But from half-time onwards in that game, it sounded like they completely dominated. So wasn't that surprised that they beat Cork, because, look, that's the standard Clare have been producing for a good few years now.
And I suppose Limerick will still be heavy underdogs, but probably would prefer Clare at home than Cork away.
Yeah, look, mentally, it's probably a little easier if you're asking player-wise. Like, having gone to Cork, Limerick would have travelled to Cork and got an absolute hammering in the league. Like, I think conceded 6 or 7 goals. And just, I suppose, traditionally, that famous word tradition, that Limerick teams, no, they'd always fancy their chances against Cork, but they'd have no hang-ups either about playing the likes of Clare, so as much as Clare have been fantastic since Colin Collins took over 10 years ago, like, they've been so consistent, there just isn't the same hang up. And I suppose having them in the Gaelic Grounds as well, even though it's not a fair trip for Clare either, but just getting to play at home is a big thing in Championship. Not that you'll have a fantastic atmosphere at Renton, but just the familiarity with the pitch and the lads used to playing there and having played there during the league. All these things add up to giving you a bit extra of a chance, we'll say.
Yeah, they played, I suppose, in the quarterfinal last year, coming in very different circumstances this year. How hard is it to get over the league when you have been relegated the way Limerick are relegated?
Yeah, I've been relegated both ways. One time when you knew going into the last match you were already relegated, and another time when you just found out after the final whistle that you've gone down, even though you've won your game. So while at the time it's tough to take, we'll say if you bring it to the last day and you lose out, it is tough to take, but you probably do take more away from that in the long run. There are very few high points for Limerick during the league, a lot of low points. I suppose the Meath game would be the highest of the high points. That was on the Gaelic Grounds. Limerick the same day they looked like Limerick last year, we'll say. They just had that go about them, that energy about them. Put up 17 points, which is a massive score really in comparison to what they were scoring the rest of the league. Against Kildare, they had chances. They probably didn't produce the same performance as the Meath game, but they certainly had goal chances that day. Is it hard? Look, I've always found if the league doesn't go well for you, this is just from my experience, that usually you have a kick in you when it comes to Championship. You just do, because you don't feel like you've achieved anything. You feel like you've a few wrongs to right. And I would hope that would be the same in the camp with Limerick. They're a month out from after playing Clare and Ennis. It'll be a month between the end of the league and the match Saturday. So it's a good amount of time to circle the wagons. And I would hope for a good showing on Saturday.
Are you expecting that they'll have regrouped enough to be competitive at the least, I suppose?
Yeah, I would, because, look, there's the league, everything has been a bit of a mess so far this year with a lot of things in the background and just different things. And even on the playing field, like, you're going into the year without Josh for the whole year, who was a focal point in the full forward line last year. You're missing Dara Tracy, who's looks to have finished up possibly with Limerick, who knows. a vital cog in the middle, but you still have a good spine there in the backs. Like you still have Donal goals, Brian Fanning, Sean O'Dea, Ian Corbett. By all accounts, according to Mark Fitz, is going to be back and healthy, which is massive for Limerick. So having a strong base like that, it does give you a bit of confidence going in. The thing will be, can they get enough scores up the other end? It's been a problem during the league. Like you're missing, even going into the match now on Saturday, you're missing probably Adrian Enright through suspension as well, who played that championship match there against Clare last year and had a fantastic year last year. So it's up to other people to pick up the pieces. Like Carl Downs has been a good addition to the group this year. Barry Coleman, I think it's his second year been involved, has shown his ability as well. Like, but you'll need other people to step up, but it certainly gives confidence when you have the likes of Ian, Cillian Fahey, Brian Fanning, Sean O'Dea still knocking around in the Limerick half of the field.
So far this year, we've seen like Cian Sheehan kind of moving around, Paul Maher in the forwards, Cillian Ryan the forwards that we've known in the backs. Would you rather see him kind of revert back to what we saw last year, or?
Yeah, look, I suppose Keane got his All-Star nomination, we'll say, playing at wing back. So I wasn't really sure why. Look, it's always worth trying different things, but I wasn't really sure why he was moved away from that position. It looked like by the end of the league he was kind of moving back towards that position again, because I do think if Limerick are to, I know we're looking at getting some scores, but if it turns into a shootout on Saturday, and the weather doesn't look hectic, so it mightn't, but if it does turn into a shootout, unless Limerick are getting a lot of goals, like that Clare forward line with M. McMahon, Keelik Sexton is back now from injury. Like they have scores from all over the place. So I don't think it would suit Limerick getting into a shootout. So for that to happen, they have to be strong defensively. So having the likes of Keane back there, Ian, as I mentioned, Cillian, we know Brian and Sean and Donal controlling things back there. So then it needs to be real solid. It needs to be solid, because during the league, I suppose there was too many soft scores being given up. And if they're to have a chance on Saturday, that part of the game has to be really solid and structured. And I think it will be, and I hopeful it will be, given the clientele that are on the pitch.
Yeah, you mentioned Clare's forward line there. You think Limerick will probably need to score goals kind of regardless of how it goes?
Yeah, I do. Like, the Clare forwards, like they are putting up big scores. And they are scoring a lot from play. Like they completely dominated Cork from play. Like if you took away Stephen Sherlock's frees that day, it would have been a very comfortable victory for Clare. And they tend to kick a lot of wides from play too. Like, so their scoring opportunities, they're kind of like the Limerick hurlers almost attitude. They'll take the shot when it's on, and they don't mind. I suppose they prefer to be getting scores than wides, but they're getting 20 plus, 25 plus shots off nearly per game from play, which is an awful lot. So yeah, they have the forwards. So that's where I know I've said this before, but possession is such a big thing. The Gaelic Grounds plays a very big pitch. So if you can actually have the ball in the Gaelic Grounds, you have total control, because there's so many areas you can play in. So that'll be interesting on kickouts. Look, we know the dog in the street knows the way Limerick set up on kickouts as regards what they want to do. It was interesting the last day that Cork actually pushed up on Clare kickouts, got a lot of joy off it until Darren O'Neill came onto the pitch in the second half, and he's just a massive man out there. So it'll be very interesting to see what Limerick do with the Clare kickouts. Do they push up, or do they just let them win it and see can they hold them out and turn them over around midfield? Again, it'll be interesting to see what Limerick have learned from the league game against Clare. Clare learned an awful lot from that Cork game in the league, and set up with matchups and set up with their kick out off the back of that. I'm sure Mark Fitz and Mike Downey and Owen Joy and John Chalk and the lads will hopefully have learned a lot from that league game a month ago as well.
And what's a good outcome for Limerick this weekend? Like, can you lose and leave the Gaelic Grounds with confidence, or is this a must-win game?
Look, it's not a must-win. Look, it's a must-win if you're talking about Sam Maguire. Like, that's the reality of it. If you want to compete, and that's Sam Maguire, and that's where every player wants to be, then you have to win the game. That's be all and end all. And Clare will be the same. That's why they were so up for the Cork game. What you're looking for really is, like anything, if you're involved as a coach or as a porter, you want a good performance, a good showing, like last year. Like we all know it's in them because they were so consistent doing it last year. It's not just something they did once or twice last year. They were consistently performing well last year. So if you have that and you can come away, like a loss a loss is a loss, but there's different ways to lose. Like if they lose damage limitation, then that's not really where this Limerick team are at the moment. Like they're better than that. Like damage limitation isn't what you're talking about. Of course they have a chance of winning. Of course they do, because they beat Clare 12 months ago. Clare are in a better place now. They have Keaton Sexton, they have Stephen Ryan back in goals, and Limerick have lost players. So it's turned a small bit that way. And even form-wise, Limerick's form isn't as good. But they still have it in them. It's one match. It's kind of one of those things. They have a free swing at it. It's knockout Munster Championship, and for the two teams, it's actually knockout Sam Maguire, because whoever wins is going into the Sam Maguire, and whoever loses drops to the Talton. So you'd hope there's a small bit of casualness to Clare having gotten over the big hurdle, and now they've got Limerick to get over, who they'll fancy to beat definitely. But you just hope there's a sting in the tail, and that there's a bit of bite in Limerick off the back of the league, because I do think with the characters that are there, it's in them. But it's on the day. Like, can they get it out of them on Saturday?